case. Because the alleged facts of the ongoing case involving Jody Hildebrand are intertwined with this case, our office will not be making additional statements to the media at this time. For further information, we refer you to the pleading document in support of guilty plea and the factual basis and the plea terms in that.
What are the plea terms, just basically?
And I can do that also. Like I said, we'll be happy to, if you contact our office, we'll be happy to release this if we get it up before the court gets it up. But the plea terms are relatively simple. She pled guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. The state agreed to dismiss the 2 other counts of child abuse. And she agreed to serve a prison term, and that the term for the 4 different counts will run consecutively and not concurrently. And she agrees, I'll read this one verbatim. She agrees to testify truthfully against Jody Hildebrand, and in return the Washington County Attorney's Office agrees to remain neutral regarding future hearings before the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole.
And how long is the plea? How long is she serving those sentences?
So those sentences, each count is a 1 to 15 year term, but under the Utah sentencing guidelines, that's all flexible and up to the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole.
Will they know that more in February during her sentencing?
No. So in February she'll be sentenced, and then the Board of Pardon and Parole will hold a review hearing, and that typically happens about 6 months after people go to prison. And at that point, they set the date for the next review hearing, but that's all up to them and how they handle that.
Any time served count towards that?
Typically, almost always time served counts towards stuff.
Can you go into the decision to remove 2 of those counts of child abuse?
I can't get into any more on that until both cases are resolved and appellate times have run.
And you said she'll be testifying against Hildebrand?
She agrees to testify against Hildebrand.
Okay.
So,
Thank
thanks you guys.
Okay.
So again, just to recap for you, you just heard from the prosecution about those 4 different counts. So they had charges 1, 3, 5, and 6 that Ruby Franke agreed to plead guilty here. And you just heard that she also agrees to testify in that upcoming hearing with Jody Hildebrand if things go that way. Now we're waiting to learn more about what happens next with Jody Hildebrand. As of now, things were looking to be scheduled on December 27th, but as it pertains to Ruby Franke, you heard those second-degree felony aggravated child abuse charges. She did say at the end, when they asked her how she was going to plea with that final charge, she did mention things, I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, is with my deepest regret for my family that I am guilty of that charge. Relatively quick hearing, took all of that of about 5 minutes. There was a lot of this between the defense attorney and the prosecution to come up with this plea deal. But again, we will learn more, obviously in the coming months, about how long in terms of prison sentencing that looks for Ruby Franke. But everything really quick here in St. George today, as we expected, hearing from the defense attorney last week that they were going to go forth with a plea deal. And we did have a little representation from Ruby's family in there. When she came into the courtroom, she looked back at her sister, her mother and father, gave a little smirk or a smile, and then went forward with the proceedings. So you heard it there from the prosecution, Lincoln and Ron, but as we have it here, things are wrapped up in terms of Ruby Franke, in terms of what she's going to jail for. Just don't know for how long.
And obviously the prosecutors think this is beneficial, I guess, for everyone involved, but especially for their prosecution against Jody Hildebrand.
Well, you're right, and that's what her attorneys also referenced in that statement they shared with me at late Friday afternoon. There was a lot of pointing towards what happened with Jody Hildebrand and what took place over the last 3 years as it pertains to Ruby Franke. Isolation from her family, her husband, of course, who has now filed for divorce, and ultimately what happened with the children. Of course, we're keeping the children kind of way out here in right field in all of this to protect them and the future and their integrity. But a lot of this had to do, as we understand, what took place over the last 3 years, specifically between Ruby and Jody. So now we wait to see what happens with Jody. Same 6 charges. Will the plea deal look similar? How will things be changed? I think it's interesting that it's 4 out of the 6 charges, and you just heard from the prosecution that he will not get into the reason for dropping out on those 2 charges. But in terms of those charges, 1, 3, 5, and 6, pleading guilty. There you have it, those four charges of aggravated child abuse here, both second-degree felonies. And then again, we will wait to see what that looks like for the future of Ruby Franke.
And Brian, I wanted to clarify, make sure I heard him right. He said those sentences, whatever they are, would run consecutively, not concurrently. Is that correct?
Yes, consecutively, from what I understand, and I believe that was also mentioned in the court. From my, quick hearing of that as well, I believe they will be consecutive.
And a lot of times in cases like this, if you're testifying against a key defendant, your prison time gets cut. And I guess that's a possibility here too.
Well, not to speculate, but that's obviously the interesting part here when you have these two hearings separate, Ruby first, Jody second, and then of course the statement here from Ruby's attorney kind of shifting the focus towards Jody, and now we know that she will testify against Jody Hildebrand. There is, you are seeing that pointing of the finger, so to speak, towards the other individual. So there is a chance that it could be all of those charges for Jody Hildebrand. It could be one less, but I'd find it hard pressed to see it less than the 4 counts that Ruby ultimately pled guilty for today.
Okay, Brian Schnee, thank you so much. We were told earlier as well that Ruby Franke said in court no one had pressured her to do anything into this plea agreement. Were you in court for that as well, Brian?
Yes, I just stepped out very quickly to talk to you guys. She said a couple of things. She did say, in terms of the proceedings, she did acknowledge that she's ready to move forward. She said that no one was pressuring her, no under the influence of anything. The judge, John Walton, did ask if there's anything outside of the plea agreement that he needs to be aware of. She said no, and then again, towards the end of reading off that, admitting guilt to those 4 charges, did really put forth an amount of regret towards her family. So as we learn more, hoping to speak to other folks here today about what this means for the future, obviously of Ruby Franke, but her business partner, Jody Hildebrand, at one point. So as we learn more, we'll bring it to you both on air and online, and of course our social media platforms.
Okay, Brian Schnee, thank you very much for being with us. Big developments in this case. Of course, we've been covering this all along the way. And if you want to catch up on some of our past stories, you can go to KUTV.com. We have it all there for you. Now, coming up here at noon, and about 40 minutes from now, we will have more in-depth coverage of what happened in that courtroom today.
Yeah, hear from our other reporter there, Amanda Gilbert, as well. You can always find our past reports at the KUTV YouTube page as well, and on KUTV.com. This is a story we'll be following for the entire day, so be sure to tune in for the very latest.